The movie begins in early 17th century East Asia, where the Jurchen names itself the Qing Empire, despite the border conflicts they face against Ming China. With this move, they forced the Korean dynasty, Joseon, to become a servant nation. Still, they resisted due to their allegiance with Ming China. On December 14, 1636, the Qing's army crossed the Yalu River to invade Joseon, forcing King Injo and his retainers to take refuge in a fortress atop Namen Mountain. This event happened in the middle of a harsh winter. On a snowy battlefield, brave Korean Interior Minister Choi Myung-kil rides his horse to face the Qing army alone. He does not feel intimidated by them, even as archers shoot arrows in his location. As a royal envoy, he demands an audience with Qing General Yeung Goldae. In another part of the region, the Minister of Rights, Kim Sang-hun, is being escorted by an old man in the frigid wastelands. He tries to persuade him to return to the fortress for a reward. Still, he refuses, thinking about his granddaughter's well-being in his home near the river. His efforts fail, so as the man leaves him behind, he strikes him with his blade to kill him. Inside the fortress smeltery, two brothers, Chilbok and Sol Nal-su, see droves of soldiers moving out to defend their nation from the threat of the Qing military, with half of the villagers evacuating the fortress. Nal-su does not want to evacuate, intending to stay at the citadel until he dies. Meanwhile, Myung-kil returns to King Injo with the news that the Qing barbarians want Joseon to renew their unity pledge, having no intention of starting a war. This is concerning because the king believed a peace treaty would only sacrifice their allegiance to the Ming Empire. Myung-kil surprises everyone in the court when he reveals that Qing intend to take their crown prince So-yun as leverage. Despite his son's willingness to honor the agreement, the king requests the council speak their minds on the matter. Just then, Sang-hun bursts through the door, begging the king not to give in to the terms but take down the entire Qing army instead, placing bounties on their heads. The Council of the Elders agrees as they wish not to put the prince's life in danger. However, this does not sit well with Myung-kil, as he believes that failing the negotiations will cause the Qing Empire to raise their demands, eventually consuming the nation entirely. King Injo has heard enough and asks them to reconvene again, as he has fallen ill. Elsewhere at the Qing enemy camp, a doubtful General Yeung Goldae discusses with his loyal advisor and brother, Yeung Myung-soo, about taking down the Joseon fortress should their negotiations fall out. He then instructs all the paths leading to the fortress get blocked by wooden barricades. At dusk, Sang-hun discusses with General Li Shibek their strategy to defeat the Qing invaders with only 13,000 soldiers available. They reach the top of the fortress walls when they see Nal-su and Chilbok reprimanded for starting a campfire. The blacksmiths request straw bags, proposing that they will keep them and the soldiers warm from the harsh winter. The idea slightly enthuses Sang-hun, thinking of it as an advantage for the upcoming offensive. Meanwhile, inside the king's chambers, Myung-kil continues to persuade King Injo to honor the treaty and send the prince away or suffer the consequences of a fortress invasion. The king requests an alternative, prompting the minister to ask permission to return to the enemy and propose another bargain. The following day, the king gathers his council and orders the food rations to be limited. They then plead with him to look after the wearing soldiers who are patrolling in the middle of the heavy winter. One of the elders suggests they collect spare clothes from nobles and give them to the soldiers to wear. Still, the council disagrees, believing it will tarnish the royal prestige. Sang-hun speaks up and relays the idea of using straw bags as protection. This pleases King Injo, so he immediately orders the plan to happen. Elsewhere, Myung-kil is welcomed as an ambassador by the Qing army, as he gets a tour of the camp through Myung-soo. Inside the tent, he presents General Yeung Goldae with a gift from King Injo. He asks for another way to resolve their issues without handing over the Joseon prince. Still, the general is defiant, blaming King Injo for their mess. He kills his dog with a crossbow and tells Myung-kil to surrender the prince before their great Khan arrives. At the council chambers, the elders agree to have Myung-kil's head cut off and sent to the enemy as a bargaining chip. King Injo faces a bind, as he does not want to sacrifice his son or the minister to please the enemy nation while knowing his people have become angry with him for his poor decision-making. Sang-hun suggests dispatching a manifesto calling for a righteous army and visiting his soldiers to boost their morale. The council is shocked to find out the Qing emperor will be arriving soon since they know he is too caught up dealing with the war against Ming China. With that said, King Injo ultimately sides with Sang-hun's plan and orders him to draft a letter for the manifesto. The following day, Sang-hun reads the heartfelt manifesto in front of the soldiers, with the supervision of the council and King Injo. Afterward, the king requests one of his officers to deliver a letter asking for the Southern Army's assistance. He then turns his attention to the soldiers and tells them to fight valiantly for the country and return to the capital to be handsomely rewarded. The army, which also recruited Nal-su and Chilbok, moves out toward enemy lines. While stopping to refill the gunpowder, they are ambushed by the Qing soldiers hiding on the hill. They are quickly overpowered, forcing them to scramble and retreat. Nal Su sees Chilbok shield himself from attackers, but he trips and falls. As his brother flees to safety, he shoots the mace-wielding horseman trying to pursue him. During a nightly briefing, the brothers report the incident to Sang Hun, saying their weapons are useless against the invaders and they will need the king to give them new ones. The following day, General Yonggolde and his brother bring their group closer to Nimen Fortress. However, they believe it will be heavily guarded since the attack. The general then orders his men to hastily build a new settlement before the emperor arrives. Back at the king's court, the council worries about the Qing army's encroachment now that the southern armies have declined to fight for them. They bring up the idea of executing Myung Kil to resolve the issue, but the king dismisses it. Sang Hun discloses the blunt weapons, requesting King Injo to excuse the blacksmiths from sentry duty to craft new ones for the soldiers. With the request granted, Nal Su and his brother work tirelessly to sharpen the blades and create finer ammunition. Not long after, they test them in battle during another siege against the Qing army. General Li and the soldiers fight courageously, killing many enemy invaders. After the fierce skirmish, they march, carrying one of the Qing men's decapitated head back to Nimen Fortress as a trophy. Curiously, on the way there, the general wonders why a little girl is hiding on the side of the road to the north gate. This matter is brought up during the council meeting, as the king commends General Li for the victory. Sang Hun believes that if a small child can slip past the enemy's heavily fortified encampment, it must be a sign that they can defeat the Qing army. Shortly after, the little girl, Naru, is brought before King Injo. As she talks about why she is alone in the wilderness, Sang Hun realizes this is the granddaughter of the old man he killed in the frozen wastelands days ago. The king then orders him to shelter Naru temporarily while they search for her grandfather. He then leaves her to a female caretaker, refusing to answer the little girl's query about finding her grandfather. Visibly guilty, he retires in his room, staring at the blade piercing the old man's chest. On another cold day, Myung Kil visits General Li and shares a drink with him. He questions if they are doing the right thing by beheading their enemies while he is being urged to sacrifice his head to save their nation. Though he lingers with the thought of feeling worthless as a foreign minister, he wishes to have grown with the ideals of General Li to become a soldier. Sometime after, at another council meeting, the elders bring up the lack of food to feed the weary horses. One of them suggests stripping down thatched roofs and straw bags to make them food, but Sang Hun detests this, as the soldiers are more important to keep alive and fed. To settle the argument, King Injo asks Myung Kil for his opinion. He notes that the soldiers are human and will easily be discouraged without rations, unlike horses that do not express emotion. Nevertheless, he agrees with the majority of the council since it is vital to maintain a working cavalry. The next day, the soldiers rip out every straw bag and roof and feed them to the horses, disappointing some townsfolk who are worried they will not last in the cold. Days later, King Injo's messenger's head is picked up by one of the soldiers and brought to General Li and Sang Hun. At the chambers, the king realizes the Qing army is becoming more ruthless and worries about sending another man to the southern armies. Myung Kil reminds him that it is best that only the man's life was claimed by the enemy, not the Joseon Manifesto, which they may use against them. After the meeting, Sang Hun is approached by Naru, but he lies about not finding her grandfather. The next day, the king reverses his course of action, ordering the men to kill some weak horses to feed and strengthen the soldiers. At the courtyard, one of the soldiers thanks the council for providing their meals while also fooling around about their plight. The prime minister becomes enraged, ordering his tongue to get cut off. Still, General Li intervenes, with Sang Hun and Myung Kil collectively persuading him to excuse the behavior to gain the soldiers' loyalty in the long run. At another council meeting close to the new year, Myung Kil requests permission to return to the Qing camp to find out if their emperor has arrived while carefully observing the situation there. King Injo agrees but orders the prime minister come along with him. Inside the encampment, the prime minister questions Myung Su for his allegiance to the Qing Empire, knowing he was initially from Joseon. He reveals that he had grown tired of being a laborer for Joseon, as his parents have been serfs for their lords. Later, during the courtesy call, General Yonggolde refuses to accept the gifts brought by the Joseon envoys. They then beg for a meeting with the Qing emperor, but he says the Khan will summon King Injo in due time. Returning to the king's court, Myung Kil reports seeing Qing slaves building ladders for the army long enough to reach the height of the fortress walls. Massive cannons were also seen being made for an upcoming siege, which would coincide with the arrival of the Khan. The council members believe it is time to breach their camp and fight back, but Myung Kil feels they might lose the nation entirely if they don't succeed with their surprise attack. Nevertheless, the Joseon army, led by the prime minister, gathered in the morning to move out toward the Qing encampment. General Li suggests letting a scout spy on the area first, but the prime minister believes in an all-out offensive. As the drums sound off, the soldiers appear hesitant to advance. Enraged, the prime minister executes one of them to force them out. As they cautiously approach the area, they discover that only a deer is left when General Li Dugab fires his arrow. With the enemy seemingly retreating, they advance, destroying the wooden fences. Unfortunately, once they reach an open plain, cannonballs start flying over the army, killing most of the soldiers while others retreat to safety. A horde of cavalry units ran across the battlefield and forcefully breached the Joseon troops' defensive position. The prime minister then orders General Li to call in more soldiers. Still, he disobeys, signaling for an immediate retreat instead. Sadly, many of the soldiers get killed by the Qing army on their way back to the fortress, with over 300 recorded dead from the attack. King Injo is devastated and wishes to punish everyone responsible for the massacre. The prime minister blames General Li for disobeying the orders. However, Sang Hun implores the king to spare his life, as the soldiers need a leader. Ultimately, King Injo orders the general to administer 30 lashes. At the same time, the fortress commander is executed, and the prime minister is replaced by Myung-kil as the commanding general. A few days pass. Sang Hun reports activity in the Southern Army's camp, thanks to a monk who visited recently. With the help of over 10,000 more soldiers, he suggests they can effectively launch a surprise attack at night. After King Injo signs the letter, Sang Hun orders Nal Su to deliver it to the Southern armies, despite his apprehension. Chilbok enters and gets frustrated over the lack of action in providing a safer life inside the fortress, knowing his parents died during the previous war. By morning on the first day of January, a guilt-stricken Sang Hun persuades Naru to eat the soup prepared for him. Simultaneously, far into the Qing encampment, the Khan sees the Joseon Empire perform a yearly ritual in honor of the Ming Emperor. Still, instead of disrupting it, he lets them continue. That night, the ministers speak before King Injo about facing the Khan, disputing whether it is better to meet each personally or send letters. Still, the matter is left unresolved as the king cannot decide. Meanwhile, Nal Seo readies himself to travel with the sealed letter from the king. Before departing, Sang Hun reminds him of a bountiful reward for his service. Still, the blacksmith only cares about seeing the people live their everyday lives. As expected, the Qing army tracks down Nal Su to confiscate the letter. Hiding up in a tree at night, he waits patiently for one of the scouts to fall for his trap and stabs him from above. As King Injo receives a threatening letter from the Khan to honor a peace treaty or suffer the consequences of being overthrown, more days pass. He convenes with the council, unsure about what to do next since they still need to wait for reinforcements from the southern armies, depending on Nal Seo's success. In the meantime, he orders Sang Hun to construct a courteous letter telling Khan his wish to continue living, but the minister objects as it goes against his beliefs. With that, Myung-kil volunteers to write the letter himself. Meanwhile, Nal Seo surprisingly awakens at the Joseon Southern Army's camp, with the letter already distributed directly to the field marshal. That night, after getting no updates from Chilbok about his brother, Sang Hun sees the little girl drawing fish on the snow. She is reminded of her fisherman grandfather and says she will catch the minister a perch once the river thaws and the dandelions bloom. Elsewhere in his study room, Myung-kil finishes the letter. The following day, the council convenes, with members begging the letter to be burned. After reading it, King Injo hears the two ministers angrily dispute whether it should be sent to the Khan, with both men having separate ideals about sacrifice and death. In the other Joseon camp, the field marshal decides whether they should help protect Naman fortress or disobey the king's orders. One of his officers implies that they should kill the messenger and deny the letter's existence. Fortunately, Nal Seo becomes aware of this plan as he lures the officer into a trap and overpowers him before escaping. The officer declares him an enemy scout and orders his men to chase after him. Nal Seo tries to flee from them by climbing the frozen waterfall when suddenly, the Qing army appears and kills some Joseon officers, unknowingly saving the messenger's life. In the king's chambers, Myung-kil readies himself to deliver the letter and be cast out as a traitor by the Joseon people for their survival. He begs King Injo to spare Sang Hun and honor his loyalty. The following day, Nal Seo returns to the camp, seeing it eviscerated. Meanwhile, his brothers and other soldiers are enduring the biting cold while standing guard behind the fortress's walls. Just then, a wave of cannon fire breaches the area, prompting Myung-kil to hastily reach the Qing camp. Simultaneously, Sang Hun rescues Naru hiding in a house while the bombing raid continues. With the siege underway, the Qing soldiers start climbing up the walls of the fortress, but the Joseon army retaliates, keeping them at bay. One of the council members rushes to King Injo, begging him to evacuate, though he is shocked. Eventually, Myung-kil arrives, pleading for a ceasefire as he brings the Khan the royal letter. As the battle continues, the Khan reads the letter and becomes convinced that the Joseon Empire is willing to negotiate. The attacks stop, leaving many soldiers dead at Namum Fortress, including Chilbok, which devastates Nal Seo after hearing about the news from a scout. He quickly returns to the fortress grounds and grieves over his dead body. The next day, the aftermath devastated everyone in Joseon, including the ministers. Myung-kil tells Sang-hun that the Khan agreed with the terms to never be dethroned or return King Injo to Shenyang, China, and to leave Joseon's surviving citizens alone. He offers to return to the capital with the king. Still, the minister refuses to continue serving a life bound to the will of the Qing Empire. Sang-hun believes the only path for the people now is to rid themselves of the old ways, realizing the Joseon Empire is not needed to survive and prosper. Later, he meets with Nal Seo and leaves Naru under his care, tearfully saying goodbye to the little girl but promising to see her when the dandelions bloom. The following morning, before formally exiting the Namum Fortress, Myung-kil reads the royal edict of the Khan, instructing the king to dress like a court member, walk around the base of the throne while bowing 3 times, and prostrating himself 9 times as an act of surrender. King Injo and the council move out and march towards the Qing Empire, saying goodbye to the Joseon people and the remaining soldiers led by General Li. After gathering in front of the Khan, the king performed the terms he agreed on in front of his council and the Qing army. Myung-kil cries, unable to witness the horrible and embarrassing ritual. Simultaneously, Sang-hun ends his life by stabbing himself with his blade. Sometime later, King Injo and his council return to an empty capital. After 47 days, the war officially ended on January 30, 1637, with over 500,000 Joseon people taken into the Qing Empire as slaves. By springtime, the dandelions bloomed once more. Sometime later, in the village fortress, there is peace as the residents do their daily activities. The movie ends with Naru watching Nal-su do his blacksmithing work. She is then encouraged to fly a kite with a friend and storms off as her adoptive father asks her to be careful. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.